All right, we're back. It is COMP123, summer 2016. It's lesson 11, part 4 of our broadcast here at Centennial. Okay, so we left off, we made the program and the character class to hold everything. Now we need to, just gonna kind of tone this down for a second. I want to create another form, and the next form is going to be, it's going to decide two things really quickly, and then the final form. So two more forms. One form that's going to have our race information, race, and the other one that's going to have our class. So are you a warrior? Are you a wizard? Are you a, what are you, right? Now I could use a pull down, right? I could use a pull down, or I could use a a radio button. We haven't talked radio buttons before, so I want to use another tool with something new. So let's do that. So I want to kind of go right click and go add new form, new Windows form, and we're going to call this new Windows form the class and race form, right? So class and race form. So class and race. Actually, it's probably race and class is probably better because race first, then class. Race and class. Race and class form. The race and class form has nothing right now, right? Definitely we want to do a couple of modifications to this form, like I definitely want to change my properties for the form so that it is center window, so it comes into the center again. Some people, what they do is they definitely change the size of the form so it's identical. So you want to try and have the same size every single time. It's almost like you're working with one single application. Yes, you can certainly do that if I wanted to. And to get that simple, I can go to the ability generate form, seeing it that's this big, right? And I can modify it, or I could copy this one, the other one, from this one. Hey, here's something else I could do. I could inherit my form, one form from the other. What does that mean? Okay, this is something new. So here's my form, ugly, right? But I want to inherit it, everything from this form here. I'm using inheritance on a form. That's weird. Okay, how do I do that? Well, first of all, let's go to the form itself. So I want to go to the code behind file for the form, right? So if I go to the race and class form, and I want to right click and go to the code behind file, which is the view code, right? Notice right now that it inherits from form, but I don't have to inherit from form. I can inherit from any form at once. Example would be the ability generator form. Okay, let's see. What's the advantage of this, by the way? We'll go back and see if we can mess this up later on, right? So ability generator form, right? Oof, okay, we do that. I press save. I've inherited now everything that I have from the other form to this one. Does it change anything? If I go to my race and class form, we have a problem. It says can't see anything, right, inside this form, right? Because there's a couple things. The designer cannot be shown for this form because none of the classes within it can be designed. The designer inspected the following classes in the file, race class form, and the base class COMP123, blah, 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 ability generator form could not be loaded. Ensure that the assembly has been referenced and that all the projects have been built. Right. What that means is build solution. Right? Okay, build solution. Let's go back and see if we can see it now. Still can't. Right? So show the call stack, la la la. Remember that there's two parts to the form, right? I'm just playing with you guys, but there's two parts to the form. There's the first part of the form, which is in the design view, right? And there's the second part of the form, which is the code view, right? Well, if that's the case, here's my design form, right? Here's my design view, right? And notice that my class and race form is my partial class and race form. It does not inherit from anything else, right? Right now. So could I do the same thing? Is it possible that I could do something like, well, it also inherits from, the other thing, the ability generator, right? Maybe, I can try and do that. And if I go back to race and class form, to design it, I see this. What the? Right? I see this. Here's what I can do. If you notice now, it inherits everything that I had from before. So all the stuff, all the things that I had from one form, I'm just showing you this. I'm not telling you this is the right way. but this is we can do it, right? We can inherit all these things. Okay, if I want to see this form, and I want to go to my racing class form just to see it, remember, I need a button to go there, and we have a button, the next button from my other form, which is the ability generator form. So this is my ability generator form. When I click on the next button, here's my next button. It creates my character, right? Or it sends information to my character, but I also want to hide this form and show the next one. And I also want to make sure that my next form knows about this one. But for now, let's just hide this form, right? So, this.hide, right? And I want to show the next form, which is my new form, and I want to instantiate it from this one. Uh-oh. Well, it's not so bad. So we'll say something like this. We'll say racing class form, and we'll say racing class form is equal to a new racing class form object. And what we're going to do is we're going to say racing class form, the new one, dot show. Because that's how we do it. Show this one, hide the other one, and everything's good. So let's save everything, build everything, make sure it's all built, so we don't have any kind of cyclical references, and then click Start. So this is called visual inheritance, right? So if I click Next, I see the same thing again, because remember, it's exactly the same form. I can inherit from one from the other, yes. Everything. Why would I want that, right? In this case, I may not want it. But however, if I make a form, an abstract form, as a template that all other forms want to follow, for example, I want to have all the same style and all the button styles, everything's the same, I could do that, right? Can I individualize each of the objects on the form, right? That's the one thing you have to think about too. In my race class form, I have nothing. There's no code. But suddenly, it generates this. If I click on this object, notice that it says locked, right? It's locked because it's part of what I've inherited. I can't do anything. I can't delete this. I'm clicking delete. I can click all this. I can't even move it around. It's got to be in the exact locations that these are done here because it's locked, right? I have no access to these things. Why? Huh? I can override. I can override. But here's the other reason why I can't, right? All of these objects on my previous form, which is my ability generator form, right? If I go back to my design view and show you this object, like the next button, right? We'll just do one button. If you look at the next button, right? What's the modifier? It's private, right? If I want to make it so that anything allows you to, if I change, I can make it only for forms that inherit from this one, protected, right? Okay, I need to build again. Once I make a change to my master form, all the other forms have to follow, right? So if I go to my reading class design now, right? Notice that this was protected before, but I can move it around now. In fact, if I really want to, I can try and delete it, right? I can't delete what I have. Let me undo that. But I can move it around. I can move these things around everywhere I want, right? I can move the stuff in there. The actual object has to be in there. These objects are set. They're solid. I can't do anything with these ones. But these ones, this one here, I have control over doing stuff with it. For example, I can hide other things here that I want and show which ones I want through my protected modifier. Yes?
Public and protected. When it is protected, it can be public as well.
So the three modifiers are the most common modifiers, right? From an object-oriented perspective. Public means anybody, everything has access to them. Any form or anything, even outside classes, they have access to that property, right? Private means no one has access except for the class, right? Protected means only other classes that inherit from this class have access. All right? So that's why I can move this one around, this object, and it keeps track of it on the back end. All right, enough fooling around. I want to show you that because that's one thing I have to show you for visual inheritance. Why would I want to use it? For example, if I want to have certain objects on the form that I always want to have, like the next button. I always want to have this next button. Or I always want to have an OK button or a cancel button or whatever. I can hide certain objects I don't want to use, right? And then I can put the objects back into place, but they'll have the same style, visual style, and even have the code that's involved. And I can overwrite them. I can override these things by doing this. Also, if I want to make my own controls, right, this is the same thing. I can make my own custom controls the same way, right, where I inherit from a control. I can create my own controls, groups of controls, like nav bars and stuff like that through visual inheritance, right? We're not going to use visual inheritance here. I'm just showing you that it's possible. So once you know it's possible in your mind, like you said before, it opens up your mind to other possibilities, other things you can do, right? So it's very flexible this way.
Done my assignment. Now you're showing this.
I'm just saying.
Very difficult.
I'm just saying. There's different ways of doing it, right? So, okay, so let's go. Well, maybe not helpful. Maybe it's more confusing, right? I don't know. But let's go back and put them back. So here, I want to change this back to form. Remember, because it's just a form, right? That's originally what it was, form. That's one thing. And then on the back end, right? Remember, we also changed the designer. The designer has to change so this is gone, right? So they can't inherit from anything anymore. So that's gone. So the designer's gone. As an example, that's gone. And my racing class form, that's gone. I got to save this. Then I got to build again, right? Build again. And then we can go back to, oh, yes. It has a button that doesn't exist because I moved the button around. And on the back end, right? This next button doesn't exist. This is on the designer side. You see, I'm crazy, right? I did different things, right? So I can just delete this on the design side, right? And kill the actual comments as well, right? Because we don't want anything extra that's on there. So save. And then if I go back to the design, I see nothing, right? So because I've taken away the visual inheritance, there's no more visual inheritance. It's just the other form again. One thing I've gained is the size is approximately the same. I can always go back now and modify things by hand. So race and class. Text will be race and class. Race and class. Selection. Right? And then under this stuff here, I want to make it the same. So I can choose the same. So if I want to have the same look and feel is what I'm saying, I have a class. I could also make it abstract, right? Instead of the class being you know, a solid class. I don't want to instantiate this object. I'm just going to make it an abstract class. And then all the other forms, it's like a master form that the other forms inherit from. That's what I'm doing. You can do that. I'm not going to do that here. But what I want to do is I want to keep the same stuff that's here, right? So I know the background is going to be white. I know that. I want that to happen. So I can choose my back color. I want to make the back color white. There we go. And one thing I want to do definitely is I want to change my other things here. Like for example, I don't want to have these buttons. I only want to have back button. So I'm going to get rid of or take the ability for me not to have that. Also my border style, my form border style, that's what I changed. Instead of sizable, it's going to go to fixed single, so you can't resize it, right? My control box, which is this stuff up here, my control box, right? It's still enabled, so form the control box itself. Here it is, it's true. If I take it away, I won't even see my title anymore, right? Race and class selection. So let's do that. Let's take away the title. So I'll say control box is equal to false. So no more control box, right? So if I was to run this program now the way it is, I show you what happens after it builds. After I mess with it, right? Because I messed with it a bunch of times, right? There we are. I've got my ability generator form. Click next. And now I have my next form. It comes up here and says race and class selection, but there's no control box. Look, I can't do anything with it. I definitely want to resize it. I can't even close it. The only way I can close it is this way. So I can go back to my race and class form. Here it is. And I definitely want to move this to center screen as a default. That's where it comes from. If I want to make it exactly the same size as my other side is my form. So if I go back to ability generator form, I can see that the size of my entire form here is 527 by 520 approximately. If I want to make it exactly the same size, I could skim this a little bit. So 520 by 520, let's say. There we are. This is 520 by 520. And I'll save that. And if I go back to my racing class form to make it the same size, I could just choose 520 by 520. So 520 by 520, and now my size of the form is exactly the same size as my other one, right? Let's add some other things in here. I definitely want to have a back button so I can get back, and an exit button if I want to cancel. So somehow I want to go back. Right? I want to choose my. I want to go back to the same style. So I'm going to grab my next button, copy it, and go back into my racing class form and paste it, and just put it on the bottom left where normally back buttons go, right? And instead of being the next button, I'm going to call it the back button. And what I want to do here is I want to go back to the previous form, but I don't have a previous form, and we did that trick before where we set up a previous form, right? So I got to be able to do that. I'm just going to double click on the back button to give me the code for it. Yes.
This is our last class. I mean, instead of button, can you show the on the top there? I mean, picture and mark, what is called 2 on the top. You see when other things.
Oh, this stuff.
How can you use that? How can you
Yeah, you have to get a strip like that. It's kind of out of scope. I'll be honest with you. Like for me to get that, like we only have, so I have certain controls. I got to show you the radio button because I asked you to do that. I've shown you the combo box. I asked you to do that, right? So the radio button is today. I got to show you that because that. So I'm sorry, not because I don't want to, but yeah, I just don't have time to show you everything. This is really the Windows forms you're going to learn more about in Programming 3. Right? Yeah, you can learn more. You can do more UI stuff in Programming 3. Okay, so not because I don't want to show you, but because there's no time. All right, so my back button, racing class. Remember, to have a back button, we have to kind of have a previous form. So inside my class itself, I have to say something like my previous form is the ability generator form, right? We're going to call this the previous form, right? And what I want to say is that I want to make a reference to the previous form from my ability generator form. So from this form itself, when I go to my next, after I instantiate my racing class form, I want to, remember I did this before, I want to change the property of my racing class form. So racing class form. And it's going to be previous form. Oh. Did I make it public? I did not. We can go into the ability generator form and go dot previous form is equal to this. So we're just setting a reference to this form, the form that we're in right now, ability generator form, and we're passing it to the next form so that it knows where to come back to, right? That's all I'm saying. So if I go back to racing class form right here, we have this ability, and now when we go to the back button, what I want to do is I want to this dot hide previous form, this dot previous form dot show, and then this dot hide or dot close. We'll close it up. We probably should close it. All right, so that's one shows, the other one closes. Let's try this out. So if I go run this thing, then I can go to next, and then I can go back to the previous form. So I can go back and forth between forms now, and one instantiates, the other one closes. When I go to next, I want to be able to choose my class and race, right? Kind of stuff, race and class. So I got to program those functionalities fairly quickly because we're running out of time. So I want to go and do another group box. Now we already have some group boxes here that I want to borrow from there. So I'm going to kind of take the style of the group box, and I'll just kill the stuff inside. Oops, undo. So I'll copy this whole thing, the swap abilities group box, and I'll go back to my racing class form and paste. But instead of this, it'll be racing class, right? So it'll choose this. I won't use these things. All right, I won't use these things. I want to kind of delete these. So delete, and then delete, and delete. But what I'm going to have in here is my, undo, delete, and delete. There you go. So I don't have a delete key on my keyboard, so I have to do that. Okay, so swappability, that's not what it's going to be called. It's going to be called the select race, and this will be the select the race group box. There we go, select race. And now I'm going to select race because of our radio buttons, right? So we're going to do, I'm not sure if I have enough time to do everything because of lack of time, but we want to have radio button. And I'm going to kind of take this radio button and put it on the form, right? Here's my radio button. Okay, two things to note about the radio button. The radio button itself, by itself, has two things. It has a text box, right? So we can call this, as an example, human, right? We can actually name the text box whatever it is, right? This is the option, human. I'm making the race. And this is the human radio button, right? Not radio button 1, so human radio button. There we go. And then the other thing is, how do I know when one is aligned, one is checked, and one is not? Right? That's the challenge with this thing. So if you look through this thing, right? Now they're all part of the same group box, right? So how does it know which one is checked and which one is not, right? Because I can also check, I can make sure that it's checked by default. So I want the default race to be human. That's the default race. You can see that it's checked now. Time. So I'm going to say copy and paste and paste and paste, right? I'll move these around for a second. So you can choose one of the races, right? So we're going to put this here. So the first race is human. Oops, that's us. And then maybe make the next one will be elf. So we'll make this the elf radio button. Elf radio button, right? And we'll make this unchecked. So check will be false because I want to make them all checked. There it is. So this will be called elf. And we can have information about what they are and so on. And the next one underneath that, actually, you know what? Let me undo these little changes here for a second. I'll probably copy this one because then I get the check as well. So copy, paste, and then this one will be dwarf radio button. And this will be dwarf. There we go. And let's say the last one will be so human, elf, dwarf, halfling, right? Halfling is like a hobbit, you know, copy, paste. So let's say these are the basic races. That's all you can choose. Old style D&D, right? So this will be halfling. Right? Halfling, and halfling radio bot, halfling radio button. There we go. Yes. Okay, cool. So again, if you look at the causes validation, the check aligned is middle left, right? That's where it's aligned, checked. The context strip, the cursor enabled, flat appearance. You know, that's something you can choose as well. The appearance of the checkbox, the font of the checkbox. Right now, it's listed as sans 12 because of the group boxes inside of. Generate member is true. Image, I can assign an image for it, an image list if I really want to. The location, margin, maximum size of the checkbox, the padding that's involved with it, the size of the text box, if it has a tab stop or not, if it's text aligned in a certain way. All these things that we can put inside the text box are part of it, right? So these, you can see that allow drop, appearance, auto size, back color, all the same stuff that we have when it comes to the type of box, right? All right, let's run this thing, and I want to see what happens. Just so I go boom, boom, right? And then I can see that when I go next, I have one checked, and if I click on the other one, magically it knows that the other one is checked. Look, so I can choose one of them by hand, right? Why? It's inside of a group box. Because I put my radio buttons in a group box, automatically it knows that they're all part of the same category, the same group, right? That's why we use a group box too. That's why it's really good to do that. So I can choose human, elf, dwarf, or halfling, right? Now, we have this, but my problem is when we do this thing, there's two parts, two problems, right? One of those things. First problem is this. When I when I have my my race, I don't have any place on my character sheet or my character to keep track of it, right? So how do I do that? So if I go to my character, so my character class itself, here's my character, I need to add a race as well. So this is strength, and I'll make a prop, right, which is of type string, and we'll call this race. So it'll have a race ability as well that keeps track of all this stuff. When I go back, you can see whatever the objects are. Let's do a couple things. I'm going to point this out to you in a second. Let's run this thing for a second. So I'm here. Look at my abilities: 13, 15, 16. That's pretty good. That's a crazy character. Hold on a second. I rolled like the king of all characters here. An 18, a 17, 2 16s, and a 15. Whew, that's crazy, right? Let's put the intelligence to the strength because I want to be a strong barbarian type, right? So swap. So that moves there. Let's move my 17 to my constitution. So I'll move that to my constitution. So character, charisma, and con, right? That's a crazy character that I wrote. Swap. And let's increase my constitution. So I want to do my constitution. I want to make that up to 18. There we go. That's grayed out. All things work nice. And then, you know what? I want a 16 dexterity. So I want to change my dexterity with my wisdom, right? So swap. And that's pretty cool, man. 13, 15, 16. Look at that. It's crazy. That's a crazy character. That's a warrior, right? I want to go next. See my beautiful abilities? Crying now. Next. If I go next, I choose human, right? As an example, I haven't done anything. I go back. Do I still have those abilities? I do. Why? Because, and I'm going to have to get rid of this to show you, right? But the reason why I have them in this way is because when I go to my ability form, the way I've designed it, if I go to the code behind file for a second, so I press F7. In my code behind file, what I do is I load up the abilities for the first time when I load my form, right? So here's my generate abilities. When I load my form up, and I don't have it up here, it's probably lower down. Here it is. I generate abilities, but I only do it once. When I show my form up, the load function, the load event handler is not triggering. It only triggers on load for the first time. If I wanted to generate abilities randomly every single time I go back, right, that means I can use my activate method, the activate event handler to do that. All right, so how do I select it? So after I've selected everything, let me just go back to here, character. So in my ability form, my race form. After I select human, right, as an example, when I select this one or this one or this one or this one, depending on what I've selected, I want to have my race selected, right, in my form. So if I click, I'm going to click on all these ones. So this is that one, human radio button, check changed. Right? I know it sounds like a little crazy, but you have to do this for every one of them. Now I could also check to see what they are, right? But if I want pure control, I can click on all of them, and each one of them will have the little event, right? That's one thing I can do. Or I can have each of them share the same event handler, right? Because it's just a checkbox, right? So depending on what the checkbox is being checked, right? Then I could use that, and I can choose whatever that is. Remember how we did that last time? I can use the sender object, right? I can change it to a radio button, right? A radio button type. So I can say radio button, and I can modify the radio button, the sender as the radio button. I can do that. So I can say my sender as a radio button. I want to get the name, right? So my radio button, whatever the name is, right? I can say radio button. I'll call it whatever my radio button is. We'll call it the radio button, or radio button selected. Selected radio button, right? Or we'll call it, in this case, selected race. That's what we're doing. We're selecting the race. Select the race is equal to the sender, right? Whatever the sender object is, because it's a radio button, right? That's the one the one that's changed, right? So I can say that whatever, depending on what it is, the text of the object is equal to the race, right? Now I want to keep track of if I want to show you what that is, I can say debug.writeLine, right? And I can say the selected race text because it's a radio button, right? Whatever the selected race.text is, I want to write that out, right? And if I go to debug, and if I press control dot to add the using system diagnostics, so I can get the debug working. Now these are all different ones. This is called human radio button check changed. I want to change this to radio button check changed. So right click, and I want to change this rename, which is important for me to do because I don't want to just change it by hand. I want to rename this thing, right? Let's put this on the side. Of course, I can't see it. It's behind here, so I'll scroll over. So I'm going to call this the race radio button check changed, right? That's what it's going to be called. I want to apply the changes, updates the files. One day, there it is. And then what I want to do is point all these ones to this one, right? So I can go back to my race and class form, and I can choose each one of these, go to my little lightning bolt, and instead of choosing this one, I'm going to choose the race one, that one. Dwarf will be the race one. So the race radio button, and the halfling will be the race radio button. Right, there it is. And now when I go back to the code, so save that. I want to go back to my code, which is here. I have all this extra stuff I can get rid of because I don't need all this anymore, right? So I want to use one radio button to rule them all. Let's see if I get that. So if I click on my selected race, when I select it, then it's going to change to what it's going to be. It's going to show me what it's going to be. Let's try that out. So I'm going to run it. If it has a problem, it'll tell me there's a problem, right? So go next. Watch over here. This is the event window. Next. And then you can see that. Sorry, I'm going to pull this over so you can see that. It says next button. The next button has been clicked. That's the gesture, the click event, right? In my output window, this is the debug, and the output window is right here, right? So when I click on something, so when I go back to my object and it's elf is selected, it says elf, right? Dwarf. It says both the elf and the dwarf. Take a look at that. So elf and dwarf always are getting selected. Halfling, right? And notice it says halfling, human, elf, dwarf, dwarf, halfling. How come? Right? Look, dwarf. Right? And see, both are being changed, right? Both are changed. That's correct. Every time it changes, it sends both events, right, to that form. But we don't really care about the first one. All we care about is the last one, right? So see how human is the last one? We don't care about the other ones, but we want to know that that's happening. So both are being sent there, right, to select the name of the form, the name of the thing. But this is okay. Who cares, right? Because once we know we can do this, I'm just going to X out of this for now. And I wanted to show you this because remember, we're using the sender object that's part of the event. And what we're going to send it is the selected race.text is going to be the one that we're going to use, right, when we keep track of our selected race. So I want to make maybe a selected race up here. So we're going to say something like this. We're going to say public. We can make it even private. It doesn't matter. Private. We'll call this selected race, which is going to be a string type, selected race. Right? And what we're going to say here is when we choose this, the selected race button, we don't care about that. Instead of doing a right line, we're going to say is selected race. I want to say selected or this dot underscore selected race, right? Which is a string. It's equal to the selected race text from what we got. Now we have our race. And when if we had more time, we don't have we've kind of timed out. But if we have more time, I can get the details of, so depending on which one I chose, I'm going to send that stuff back to the character class, right? So if we ever choose to go back, like when I choose my back button, right, which I have, this back button, I could always say something like, well, before I go back, what do I want to do? I want to record everything in the class, right? So I could say something like my character, and by the way, I could do the same thing like we did before. I I can say var, so I could say character, right, as an example, character is equal to program.character, right? And then from there I could say my character.race is equal to the selected race, right, whatever that is. Right? And what that does is it records everything in the character class. So every time I click the back button, it makes sure that whatever I selected on this form gets saved in the character class. And the reason why I want to do that is if I want to save the character class, I have a real underlying meaning for this. If I want to do this, I want to save the character class inside of a database. So I want to save my character, I could do that by sending the whole character class to the database. Questions around this stuff. So again, I've shown you radio button today, right? So radio button is the one. As long as you put it inside of a group box, it'll switch between them. And you want to be able to detect which one has been selected. So when you select the whatever, make whatever selection you do, you can keep track of it with a single event handler. I just called mine race radio button, by using the sender event and casting it as a radio button. And then what I'm doing is I'm taking whatever the selected text is, the text of the object, which I've just defined, and I can use that text. Okay, that's it. You've got everything you need now for your final assignment, which is due next week, right? I just wanted to leave you with that before we get to the next week. And then when we come together again on Tuesday, remember that Tuesday is our exam review, so or our kind of a review before the exam. So please attend. I'm going to talk about all the things that are going to be on your exam. So please come on Tuesday. Okay. Thanks so much. See you and have a great weekend.